Hi, I'm David Ryan Barcega Castro-Harris, all five names for all the ancestors, and welcome back to the Amplify RJ podcast. This is the second half of a conversation that I had with the wonderful Carolyn Sideco. In the part one of my conversation with her, we were interpersonally checking in about how we are navigating the world as Filipino Americans, as people who are doing justice work in these trying times, socio-politically and other. But in part two of this conversation, Carolyn is bringing all of her wisdom, knowledge, and experience as a youth sports professional, doing it through the lens of social justice, doing it through the lens of kapwa, which is the Filipino idea of belonging and interconnection. And she's going to pour all that into me as I'm embarking on a new journey as a youth sports coach. So if you're a parent involved in youth sports, if you're a coach involved in youth sports, or if you just care about integrating restorative justice principles, practices, and these ways of being into the youth development, this conversation is for you. Enjoy. In the other part of our conversation, I asked you what was giving you a lot of hope and joy, or moments of hope and joy in these times. And you came back to me with this really grounded answer about doubling down on our commitments to justice and doing that in community. And that was beautiful. If I was to answer that question for myself, the moment that I felt at least the most joy or like positive feelings recently, and I don't know if you watched the clip that I sent you, but when Tyrese Halliburton sent the Pacers into overtime against the Knicks, I love basketball unapologetically. It's not like rooted in justice and equity or anything. Like, it's just been a part of maybe my blood as a Filipino, maybe my blood as a Black person, maybe just like the way that I've been socialized in the world. But from as long as I can remember, basketball has been a part of my life. Watching basketball, playing basketball to the extent that this body can do it in the time that is available to me. But it's also something that I'm passing on to the next generation, right? My kids are a little bit young to actually play organized basketball, even though like one of my favorite things in the world is that my 1-year-old knows mama, dada, and ball. Right? And takes great joy in dunking on the little Tykes hoop, right? But I've channeled some of my service energy, getting rooted in local community, kind of like what you talked about, into coaching a youth basketball team. As a way to, one, give back, as a way to like have an outlet where I'm talking to other people in not a professional capacity, building relationships with parents in the community who have children who are maybe slightly older but of similar age. But you have a plethora of experience in the coaching athletics world, and so I wanted to ask you, what should I be thinking about as a coach of, first, second, third graders? I think, well, they're rising first and second graders, going to be second and third graders. What should I be thinking about through the lens of kapwa, through the lens of restorative justice, through the lens of justice and equity in the 3 hours a week that I have with them?
Gosh, that's so good. You have 3 hours a week, and that is beautiful, first of all. I'm going to
Yeah.
acknowledge that. I'm also
And
going
then
to
2
acknowledge,
practices and then a game.
and then a game, correct.
Yeah.
And or an elevated practice, as we call it at that level, right?
It's so true.
Like, yeah, practice 2.0. Gosh, David, when you were describing this, when you were asking the question, when you're forming that question, my body was literally giddy, like this is the sweet spot. And listening to you even ask that question, I know already a few things. First of all, that question is what all people should be asking in any part of the athletics, socialization, and ecosystem. That. Two, that there hasn't been, until kind of recently, a way to get those questions answered, or that feels good for, or that's received well for those folks that are working in social justice spaces, change spaces, spaces of early socialization and responsibility to young people's socialization, which means a commitment to youth development, to be honest. The sports ecosystem, the sports space, even sports education has been a space of deep separation from community building because sports is regarded in our society as very competitive, very elitist, uh, highly regarded in terms of professional sort of business, money, now gambling, right?
Mm-hmm.
All of those things are part of the sports ecosystem. What your question is about, what are the spaces around sports as a socialization tool for someone who has a very strong and effervescent relationship with basketball? That's what you're asking me, right? You're asking me like your own identity, your own sports identity, your own relationship to sports. And now that you are a parent, now transmitting that, right? This is kind of like the sweet spot that we covered a few years ago in our initial conversations, right, about sports parenting. The change now in 2025 compared to what 2022 when we were talking about that is that kapwatizing sports and sports as a tool for social justice change and for equity is changing in the arc of justice. It's finally, I think, starting to come around and to be regarded as a pathway for social change. Previously, me talking about using sports as a way for liberation, right? I've only known just a couple of people who identify themselves as sports liberators in the same sort of frame as social justice change makers and activists and advocates, right? But now there are so many more of us. There are now organizations. I now am part of the Positive Coaching Alliance. I'm actually branded now with the Positive Coaching Alliance because they've consistently proven through the years for me as an organization that has stood for and now has a very precise and very clear equity initiative. So the Positive Coaching Alliance is that's the first recommendation I would have you look into is literally get your training through Positive Coaching Alliance. If the organization that you coach with, may I ask, are you volunteering?
Oh yeah, I'm
Okay.
definitely volunteering. It's the city, which I will not name.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if the city has Positive Coaching Alliance workshops available to you, either through grants or if they have funding to pay for it, do that. Encourage your fellow coaches now that you're on a coaching team, whether that's in your league or in the program, encourage that way of getting trained. They have an initiative to train 10,000 coaches. It's a collaborative initiative, and I would highly recommend that. There's so many resources on their website for parents, for athletes, for coaches, and it is now, yeah, they are one of the organizations that I work with that are doubling down on equity.
Hmm.
So I would highly recommend that. I would reassure you, first of all, that you're not alone. There are other folks that are leveraging sports as a pathway to holistic youth development. If that is your jam, which I believe it is, there's resources there. You have me as a resource. Uh, I can connect you with other orgs, other people that are in this same vibe. I'm a member of the board of the Center for Sports and Social Justice out of the CSU East Bay, which is up here in Northern California. And social justice in sports is not mutually exclusive. They
Yeah.
are, and they should be regarded together. And there are people doing that good work. There have always been people doing this good work.
Yeah.
It's been really good. It's been really good because sometimes, unfortunately, it's because we're up against a formidable opponent, right? We're up against a lot of energy, a lot of constrictions, and it's a hard time organizationally for a lot of people. Organizations, youth development organizations, are getting cut, having their funding taken away, and now it kind of lays bare really what do we as community members, what can we contribute, how the sports ecosystem has to also evolve and change in order to meet those needs of the people instead of the other way around. Instead of the people having to meet the needs of the sports ecosystem, right? Oh my gosh, what programs are my kids supposed to be in, and what is my parental obligation to their sports learning, right? Instead of that, what's happening now is that the people are demanding that their families get taken care of, that sports and coaches and people in the sports ecosystem don't exploit them
Mm-hmm.
or don't overpromise and underdeliver. The people are making those demands. Families are saying, I can't coach for free. Who's gonna watch my young kids? Or I need a program where I could bring all my kids to,
Yeah.
right? So those conversations are happening, and sports in some spaces, especially in the youth sports and developmental areas, sports is yielding. I'm happy to report from my perception, from my lens as a sports consultant. Um, Sports is yielding to the needs of people. When I interact with organizations that have a mission, especially in the wake of uh, uh, George Floyd's murder, right, 5 years ago now, in the wake of the need for mental health resources and regard, in the wake of the effects of COVID, and sports tried to be that for all people. Sports organizations, for their own survival, got into the mental health care space, and they started to put it on coaches and adults in the sports spaces to take care of young people better. And I can't think of a less equipped ecosystem to do that than sports, when we're socialized, so many of us, especially of certain generations, where we were socialized to suck it up. We were socialized to
Yeah.
to uh, to just accept the fact that we're going to get yelled at, or that we're going to use uh, the joy of sports as punishment, um, and that we're going to push, 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 and be elite and take all fun and joy out of sports, because that's what our capitalistic, individualistic society has constructed as the definition of what sports is going to be in America. COVID and George Floyd's murder and Black Lives Matter, all of those social sort of changes, all of those events have forced our sports culture to reconsider itself. And that reckoning is also happening, I'm glad to say, in sports.
Yeah. I appreciate like the widened out like landscape, like the conversation about like how the landscape is changing, and definitely appreciate the resources. I'm going to tap into some of those. Yesterday was my first practice with these kids, and this is a very low stakes league, mandatory substitutions every
Yes,
five
it
minutes so
should be.
everybody gets opportunities, right? This isn't a place where this is not an AAU circuit. This is not a place where people are like already looking for like NIL deals or whatever, right?
Yeah.
This is a
Although in
place where
California,
parents,
in California, the rules for NIL are different. You and I have talked about this before, I think. So
yeah,
that's another
right.
conversation.
Yeah, I mean, not for like maybe in extreme cases for 7-year-olds, but that's not like that's not the energy of the parents. That's not the energy of the league. That's definitely not the energy of the players. When I
Good.
think about this dynamic where, and like, because of changes in parenting, because of changes in like our childcare dynamic yesterday, my 3-year-old was like right alongside me in practice the whole time, and nobody batted an eye, right? This is like super low stakes sports. And it was fun, and the other kids were totally accommodating. The parents were like, yay, go nuts. But what I'm thinking about is most of these kids can't dribble very well. Most of these kids can't hit the rim from 10 feet away.
Mhm.
And so how do I balance the energy and the time of like skill development, which is important, fun, which is also important, team building, but also through this lens of kapwa, team, and lak'ech. It would be in lak'ech for the population that I'm working with, right? Like I'm another you are another me. And sure, there's one kid already who is, I know, already the best player on the team,
Mhm.
but like this is not about let's see how many points you can score. This is about how do we leverage your skills to make everybody on our team have opportunity to like learn and play this game together. What is the balance of like those six of how I do all of that in 60 minutes? Well, like also like trying to keep 7-year-olds focused.
I think for your specific context, the balance rests in the modifications of the game.
Mhm.
So they shouldn't be shooting to a 10-foot basket. That should be lowered, first of all. They're 7 years old. If they already don't have a modified basketball, it means a smaller basketball. If they already
Oh,
don't
they
have
have
one,
that, yeah.
okay, good. And modifying the rules, like you said, are already modified in terms of participation and things like that, but also the actual skill learning can be modified, right? If and you could also do this from a historical perspective, but this is as a physical educator and adaptive, with background in
Mhm.
adaptive physical education and modification, is how are we going to gamify that practice
Mhm.
to have a resemblance to basketball, but that's going to be learning how to play, not learning basketball yet. You're going to have basketball
Mhm.
content, right? You're going to have the ball, it's going to look like basketball. But how do you create that culture of play that resembles basketball but is modified enough so that that one player that you've already identified as being highly skilled, right, in context, that person doesn't have the ball all the time,
Right.
right? So don't put that person as the point guard, right? Even though we know that if the goal is to score, you
Mhm.
gotta, whoever can shoot, right? And we already know there's data to this, especially with girls, that if they don't feel that they can contribute, then they're going to opt out. Unfortunately, they're
Mhm.
going to opt out. They're going to see if the goal is to score points, and the kids know that one kid is the one who scores the points, they're going to keep giving the ball to they want that kid to have the ball, and then they won't
Mhm.
develop this sense that they themselves can actually score too,
Yeah.
right? They're going to have Scottie Pippen syndrome, or like,
Shots fired.
right? They're
Yeah.
gonna be co-signer, right? They're gonna, and then they risk, oh no, I'm gonna be the one getting posterized, or I'm gonna, like these are the psychological sorts of places that you want to affect, that you want to interrupt. Is that you want them to think like, oh, uh, they have skills that
Mhm.
contribute to the fact that they're all having fun. So whether that's changing the goal, right? The goal is not to score a basket or 2 points, or the goal is not to shoot. The goal is to make sure everyone touches the ball, and then literally you run a play for every single individual on that court, meaning running a play for 7-year-olds means that you tell a specific player, you're going to shoot the ball this time,
Yeah,
right?
and then it's misdirection, like everybody run over there. So
Correct.
the other team goes to
Right.
that side and you have an open shot,
Right.
right?
Yeah. So it's like individual instruction, like player one, you're going to tell everyone else if you're on offense or defense. Like your job is to identify, does your team have the ball or not? Which way?
Yeah,
And then another one, okay, which way are we going? Okay,
yeah.
look to this player to make sure you know where your basket is, right? So modifying even like what we know as the roles of the team, right?
Mm,
You know,
mhm,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? As they get older, they're going to learn those very specific roles.
mhm.
But right now, they have to have a taste in all of those. They have to have a taste of success. They have to have a taste of affirmation. And how that happens is literally by not having the goal of making a basket, which is ironic in a game of basketball.
Well, I mean, and I think I guess a little bit of context. Last year, I coached in the same league. I coached middle schoolers. And I think the thing about this league being a city league is there are volunteer coaches like myself, who are like basketball fanatics. And then like the park staff fills in for the rest of the spots, right? And so just by the nature of most of the it's a twofold thing, both by the nature of like the teams that are coached by park staff, um and park staff have multiple teams, like do not get the same level of coaching as
Correct.
other teams with those members. And so both because I am an experienced basketball player and coach, for middle schoolers and high schoolers, and because of a scheduling snafu, like not like I ended up with like three of the best players in the league on my team. um like my team went undefeated, and like once I realized that we could win every game by 15, which is like the mercy rule in in our league in that division, um like we just had to change the incentives, because like I can play this lineup
Mhm.
and this will happen. And what ended up happening is like I'm just gonna lean on that in the fourth quarter, and like we can like keep
Right.
winning the thing, because like at that age, like one, kids want to do that, but I was already sensing like, hey, the ball is gonna go to this person or this person, and this person's gonna get them the ball, right?
That's right.
And the other two like more athletic people like play defense, get out of the way. Is
Right.
like that's exactly what happens. And maybe in middle school, like that is what is more appropriate. I also know like in this league there are kids who don't really care about basketball. Their
Mhm.
parents just want them to do sports. And
Right.
so like that's present in middle school. That's definitely present here, although like on day one, like everybody seemed to be excited, which was great. But like wildly um different levels of knowledge about basketball,
Mhm.
athletic ability, and to make it not about winning basketball games,
Mhm.
like and saying that explicitly to parents, um is important, uh because right, like we can just fall into like you get the ball, and like maybe your role as point guard is to like create shots for other people, um but you can't go shoot the ball every time.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
And you know what? And you've talked about this and you bring this up, right? You're not coaching in a vacuum, right?
right.
You're not coaching at a level where the parents, where you can distance the parents, right?
Mhm.
How I feel, especially at the younger ages, at the exposure level to sports, you have proportionally more responsibility as a coach, not just to the individual players, but to the sports identities of their caregivers, of the people, because they can't get themselves to practice by themselves, right? Or
Yeah, yeah.
they can't make, like, they have someone who speaks on their behalf and who advocates for them, because they're minors, obviously. So that is a need of the larger ecosystem that you as a coach have to address. And I think that there's there's also this idea of how are you being held, and how are you being regarded, and are you getting your needs met in terms of even just that frame of like, I'm responsible for these young people who signed up for this team, and me as a coach in direct relation to them. But really, you're in a position where it's not just that direct relation to your team members and these young people. It's now your new relationship with their caregivers. And it's now this new relationship that you have with your colleagues who are also coaching, whether they be program staff or whether they be volunteers like you, right? So we're talking about kind of like new synapses of relationship um, in this ecosystem of the sports program. So how do you do that all together? How do you uh, regard, do you have a team meeting with the parents before every practice or every game, or do you like talk with them about their concerns after practice, or are they even allowed to hang out at practice? Right? So that's a thing. And then parents are navigating that space too. They're like, okay, do I sit here all throughout practice, or like, can I say something or do I not say something? Do I, again, they're being socialized as sports parents. They're trying to figure out what their role is. When Miles, my younger son, played YMCA basketball, his first organized year, literally, the families they know what I do for a living, and they were very like, I could tell they were very like anxious, like, oh my gosh, she's going to be so judgy about how I coach, or about, what I'm yelling in the stands. And I kind of was, I'm like, do we need to use profanities, in this game? Probably no, let's not. Let's teach ourselves out of that, right? But I could tell that my presence there as a professional in that space affected how they regarded that space, right? So my question always in these spaces is, who's helping you? Is it the program that has resources for you? Are they helping? Are they availing free training? Are they training you? Are they asking you if you uh, want to attend some workshops? Like, what do you need to bring your best self and selves into that space? Are you being afforded that, or are they just assuming like, oh, David loves basketball, so he's going to be a great coach? And a lot of programs, they just don't have the capacity to do that. So that's what I ask people. I ask people, do you get what you need in order to bring your best self? Because the kids deserve that, to be honest. All of our kids deserve that. You want that for your own kids, out of the people who interact in their lives, whether that be educators, teachers, family members, right? If they are in a teaching and education sphere, you want the best for your kids, and you want to provide that for other people's kids, because they're all our kids. So if if the question, right, as a collective, as a coaching staff, if that question is, hey, I'm a volunteer coach in this program, and you are a volunteer coach in this program, and you are a program manager who's also coaching, what do we collectively as a group have available to us so we can provide quality care for these kids in sports? First of all, so they have a good time. And second of all, so that they continue to practice healthy behaviors overall, right? And sports needs to be that. And it's the most fun way to do that. But also, how can you get your needs met now with your own sports identity, now that it's shifting in this way, and so that it keeps you in there? Because the kids need you too. The kids need a caring adult. They need more than one. And I don't know why this country insists all they need is one caring adult. No, all of our kids need all adults to be caring, to have some sort of capacity to care, and to show that to them, right? The need is far greater than just one-to-one. The need is in collective groups, in programs. So the program itself has to have evidence of this collective care. And for a coaching staff, that means support with basketball fundamental drills and modified approaches, right?
Mm-hmm.
The stuff that I learned as in college, right? As a phys ed major, as a sports, that was my minor. It's in sports coaching, so I got that as college level content, right? But for so many people who we need as sports coaches, we have to train them. We have to train each other.
Yeah, because otherwise, like, I'm going on YouTube and, well,
Correct.
I'm doing a handful of things. One, like remembering what I did, and then
Mhm.
going on YouTube, and then like scaling down from there, right? Because I know I went in with the intention to put them through a couple of things that I knew they weren't going to be able to do, to identify like how close are like some of these kids to like actually playing basketball in a good
Yeah,
way, and like, level setting for myself, like I don't want to like dumb it down too much, but I also like want them to be successful.
right,
Yeah, like
right,
successful and push themselves, right?
right. If
Without
it,
those resources from the
yeah,
beginning, right? A little
for
bit
instance,
lost.
you're not going to teach them how to gallop, right, on the basketball court, because galloping is not the movement that is required in basketball. It's actually running
Hmm.
sideways, running backwards. So various forms of running.
Hmm.
And what does that mean for a 7-year old? What does that mean for kids when we have young people uh, that haven't developed a running gait, that haven't
Hmm.
developed like what like running, but like what does the court look like? What does this mean? The things that we assume are basketball, the characteristics of basketball, has to like literally it's not it's it 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 sounds like dumbing down for you because of your experience and now you are in this time of your life and because your own sports identity. But for these young people who, if this is their first exposure to organized basketball
Hmm.
play, you're pouring into them. You're not dumbing it down. You're actually building the scaffold, right? So you're saying
Yeah.
this is athletic stance. This is what's called athletic stance. This is how you stand on the court. This is what it looks like. This is what it feels like. What does a jump feel like? What
Mm.
does
Hmm.
handling the ball like literally examining the basketball. What does it feel like? Why are these lines like this? Why does it feel this certain way? You know, um, connecting like a skill like shooting, right? You know how I learned shooting as a teacher? I learned shooting by using cues, right?
The
How we're
letter.
going to teach the cues, right? So we say tray, cookie jar, and then
Mm-hmm.
get the cookie, come out. Like there are ways that are expansive to basketball lingo that are integrated into the basketball lingo, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not dumbing down. I think it's a challenge for you. It's going to be a challenge for you to make it accessible
Yeah.
to these
I
kids.
think as someone who, when I first played organized basketball, I already knew what I was doing.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? Because of like playing in the driveway at the park and like watching so much basketball.
Mm-hmm.
um and I'm aware that like, and like I find myself in this kind of position in many arenas that I enter where like I know, like, although I might come in as a beginner to that space, like I know more than the basics, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've been the kid, both like partially like just as like the kid of a teacher, who has always been prepared and like goes into that space when like things are redundant for me. It's like, seriously, we're doing this? And so
Right.
like that's the energy that like I want to prevent from like some of the other kids. But like I understand like just watching that first practice, but like, oh, like we need to like slow it down. And so I use colloquially dumb it down, but like slow it down and go
Mhm.
like
Yes.
back to even more basics for most
Yeah.
of them, right? And that's okay.
Right. Right. Exactly. And you know what? And the sort of like people are concerned a lot from what they tell me is like, well, how do I keep it challenging? right? For the people who are highly engaged, right? The ones who have had success, in it, who watch basketball, who are, who are in families and circles where, they know basketball culture, or they know that they, and how then do we keep them engaged while making sure that ones who maybe, like, they're coming to basketball and they've played soccer, like, for the first 5 years of their life,
Yeah.
and so how is it that we can expose them and get them engaged in a way that that encourages them and motivates them and helps them to feel included, while we say, this is a challenge for those of you who are, like, the kids who are starting to roll their eyes, like, oh my God, like, are we going to do the passing drill again? Like, like, that's the challenge, right? And specific youth development practices, youth development sports practices is a curriculum. I mean, it's there are plays, how to embed, how to do a practice plan with ethnic studies, with an ethnic studies lens, how to do or practice plans that have this modification for the needs of this, and that's, again, like, I'm going to say Positive Coaching Alliance, specifically because I do work with them, and they have an initiative, equity initiative, and really learning from tips and really simple strategies that you could literally implement on day one, right? To develop these youth development tips with actual basketball skills before they pass to someone. They're gonna name that person. They're gonna say that person's name out loud, right? Like those simple things, right?
And loud enough for them to hear it.
Correct, right? That how do they if they start to develop gestures, and then they see a lot of this on TV as well, right? You'll know the ones who try to emulate, the players that they admire, moves that they like that's what we did, right? We tried to emulate that. And so as they're doing that, like, they can develop their own signals to one another, their own communication with one another, and those are the hallmarks, really, of creating the foundations for a regard for the team, right? For that, developing the team culture, even if it's for a season, right? Even if it's for a season, player so and so wants to be called, Shaq. I don't know. However they want to be regarded, their team is going to provide that for them, right? So those are, I mean, really simple ways. Even, like, I don't know, do you all do, like, team captains, and, like, who gets to pick the game ball, right? That should be, like, everyone gets to pick the game ball. Who gets to distribute the snacks after? Who has what parent, even, and then you incorporate the parents in that, and not just in snacks, but, like, if what I used to do as a coach, and this helped me in terms of even my my way to orient myself to coaching as a staff or coaching as a group, is I was just telling this to someone yesterday, like, I would call a timeout at the very first dead ball of the game. I'd call a timeout, and then we'd huddle. And the first timeout would always be for the parents. So the parents would, they would sit very close to the bench. I'd have the kids sit in the chairs, and I literally would talk to the parents. And then the parents, I would say, okay, ask them what they're doing. And the parents would say, are you on offense or defense? And then the kids would say, I don't know. Like, like, okay, who's, what's going on? Or how do you feel? Are you excited? Or the first the first timeout would always be as this wider group. And I got to do that because it was youth development within a basketball context. People thought it was weird. They're like, we're barely getting started. Why are you calling a timeout? Right? Or the coach or the parents would be like, why is she calling a timeout? And it literally was to huddle with the team and our whole team. That includes the caregivers, and say, okay, hey, we're playing a game. Right? So whatever this was, like, we're going to do a collective exhale, right? And that was a hallmark of all of my like very young teams. And that was weird back then. And now I'm happy to say that I think more coaches are doing that. More programs are doing that. And we have to. Because what's happening in other spaces is that spectators and parents are getting kicked out. Spectators and parents are still yelling at kids and coaches and officials, and that has to change.
Yeah. How hard is your 12:30?
I have a 1:00.
Oh, okay. Okay. So, let me be a little bit more expansive because, like, I asked you a question like a little bit ago, and you're
I
like
know.
going, like, yeah.
And hey, this
Um,
T-shirt is just for you, David. They all.
oh, nice. And I think this league has done a very good job, especially in this division. This is about sportsmanship. Like,
Yeah.
that kind of behavior is not tolerated at all.
Right.
Right. And like what you're unlocking for me, and one of the other things about this being a city league is that like coaches have to be background checked, and
Right.
like I feel like they actively discourage parent involvement. And like what you're talking about is like, like youth development, like a little bit more holistic. I think I have a lot of freedom in at least my practice context because of the practice time and location. We're the only team in the gym. And
Oh,
so,
wow.
my invitation to the other teams, to the parents, like, bring your kids. Like, we're only going to use half the court anyway.
Right.
Like, so, like, if you've got other kids, like, go nuts. Like, it's not going to bother me. But, like, I'm thinking about ways to involve them in practice so they can actually talk to their kids about, like, hey, what did you do? Instead of, like, asking them after the fact when a 7-year-old's going to be like, I don't know, played basketball, right?
Right. I mean, even if it's an assignment for parents love this, especially if they love sports, if they play sports, they want to feel like they're engaged in it, right? And if
Yeah.
instead of saying like, yeah, because as sports parents, what do we have available to us? The ride home. The ride home has usually historically been like kind of like uncomfortable and crunchy. Like, oh, what did you do today? Then I'm like, I played basketball or whatever. Or oh, I'm so proud of you today. The kid's like, well, why? Or whatever,
Mhm.
right? So we have to ask better questions, right? And we can develop better questions if we're there, right? And if the parents are there, even if they're watching, you know, uh, other rugrats, gym rats hanging around and stuff, and that's how my older kid grew up, right? Having to be there with me as I worked, right? As I
Mhm.
worked in the gym and coaching, right? So not only did I model that for him while I was doing my work, right? But now we could talk about that, right? Now I can say, well, what did you experience growing up, from me, or what do you remember from my coaching style, or from if I said anything, things like that. But what parents can do now is not just witness their own kids now playing sports, and witness their interaction with you, another adult, now in in this teacher role, right? That's a lot different than like a classroom teacher or a caregiver. It's a different way of caregiving, and they get to witness that, and they can ask questions about that, right? They can ask
Mhm.
questions about um, or what they've observed without putting any judgment on it, right? And that's the hardest part for adults, is that we have to come up with some like reason, by instead of just leaving it open-ended, right? This is what I observed. Oh, I observed that you were staring at the ball a lot. Like what was that interesting thing that coach had you do? You all were staring at the ball, right? Or is there a word that coach said today that made you laugh, or that you didn't understand? Or, or I saw this is what I saw. It looked like you were having fun. Is that true?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So having just a way to have them metabolize their own experience, even as, even as 5, 6, 7, 8 year olds, they're going to do that anyway. If they do it with others, it then deepens that whole idea that, oh, people care about me doing this. I care about me doing this. I'm having a good time. Oh, other people are seeing that I'm having a good time. My teammates know that I'm having a good time, or that I'm struggling, and I'm not isolated, right?
Yeah.
So these are all the ways that we can really embed, and I'm going to say, like, we have to kind of almost guard against our usual MO in sports, which is isolation and elitism. How do we guard against isolation and elitism?
I
How
mean,
do
I
we
think
guard against
against
it?
other teams too, right? In
Correct.
the context of this league, because like my question to you is like a little bit of an opinion, but like defense is not really an issue when you're playing on this level because they're missing 80% of their shots, right?
Correct.
But like I can implement a trapping defense that will give my team more shots.
That's right.
Right? What are the ethics of that? For my team, great. Because like the kids are having fun and like they're being successful in creating turnovers and getting more shot opportunities. What does that do
Mhm.
to the other team?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, simple. Like, if you feel your team can follow instructions,
Mhm. Right.
right? There's the challenge is to be there. Okay, can you execute this instruction? This instruction is that we're not gonna trap. There's only going to be one defender on the ball handler until two baskets are made, for instance, right?
Mhm.
Until they make two baskets, we're only going to keep it one defender on the ball.
Right.
Something like that, right? And then they get two baskets, they get to experience some success. Your team is probably already ahead because they're skilled, and then that's a way to offer. I don't want to even say like make it like this equity thing, but that's a way to offer a modification of instruction. You're still giving direct instruction. It's still a game like play, right? So you're not like dishonoring the game, or doing anything like that. You're not going counter to this regard for the game, right? But you're
But it's a
putting
challenge of
it
like, can you get a stop this way?
correct, correct,
Yeah.
right? Can this defender, or even opting into that? Oh, who wants to? Oh, like they have maybe one skilled ball handler. Who wants to be on this person? Who wants to show off their defensive skills? Right? Or who wants
Mhm.
to improve their defensive skills? You're going to do that by meeting the challenge of having a skilled opponent, right? So, um, you know, then you're going to see, like, you're going to develop this culture of challenge is fun, right? And people are opting into that, instead of like, oh no no, like, oh my gosh, their better player has to be against our best player, right?
Mhm.
That doesn't improve the collective skill of the team. The collective skill of the team is literally that adage of where's your weakest link, who needs the most attention, right? In a
Mhm.
community, how then do we provide mutual aid? How do we do a universal design for the needs of everyone in our community? So those are principles, those are tenets that actually can be gamified. They can be
Mhm. Mhm.
gamified if we are open to expanding what we think of as strategy.
Yeah.
But that's informed by the strategies that we use in social justice organization spaces. in activism spaces. So those sort of strategies can be put on the basketball court.
Yeah, like the game within the game of, and sometimes the game within the game within the game,
Yeah.
to help people feel like a sense of purpose, right? Help kids feel a sense of purpose and belonging, is really what I'm going for, right?
Yeah.
Because like even in like last year's undefeated season, like I didn't really care. Like it was partially my my skill strategy development as coach, but like we had 3 of the best players in the league.
Yeah.
So like there was nothing that like I was doing that was going to bring that out of like those kids were going to excel. If those kids were together in another team circumstance, like the same outcome probably would have happened,
Mm-hmm.
right? But when we think about like the other 7 kids, which is the majority of the team, right? What is the experience that they're having, and is it just like cheerleading the other 3 that like yay, we're a part of this, or like is there more of a sense of ownership and wanting to get to that?
Yeah, there are some individuals, and I think sports should be for everyone. I think any all kids, right? All, and
Mm-hmm.
by all I mean all kids should have a space where they're learning and they're growing through sports, right? And I know, at least in my experience, I had a number of kids who the last thing they want to do is be on a sports team, and they were forced to, or they just wanted to be with their friends, and they actually, I always think of this one kid in the 4th grade. If it wasn't for the participation rule, he literally would have been okay sitting on the bench wearing a uniform,
Mm-hmm.
cheering his teammates on. And I literally had to tell him and his parents that the participation rule required for him to play 1 full quarter, right? And he asked me, he said, okay, but after that quarter, I can come back on the bench and sit with my friends. And I said, yes, right? And his needs could also be met in a competitive context, right? He was not competitive. He didn't want to barely even touch the ball. He loved coming to practice. He loved interacting with his friends. And for him, interacting with his friends meant that he had to be on the basketball team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. um I'm also aware that like these kids go to school together, they're going to be in community with each other over the next, you know, however many years of their lives that they live in this community, and giving them like a positive place to connect to. Like I'm not expecting 20 years from now they look back and like, oh, remember the summer of 2025 when Coach David did XYZ thing, but it's like, what are the feelings, what are the connections, what are the lessons that like may stick, not as like a holistic experience about this basketball team and experience, but there is something that like I want them to be able to feel, and I know
I
like
would
my
actually,
intentions are there.
but I would actually advise you, David, that to consider 25 years from now that they acknowledge you and your role as their first coach, right? As their first coach, if that was the first time they're playing basketball, or yeah, in 25 years, they should be able to um, lean on these core experiences, these initial experiences of sports as a motivation tool. Coach David, that experience has motivated me, right?
Mm-hmm.
To either keep playing, or I had a great experience, or I had an experience. They are, no matter if it's positive or negative, David, they are going to remember you. Sports
Mm-hmm.
has this power, right? And you have, with your intention there, I don't want you to ghost yourself in this. I want you to step into this idea that for those young people that you're coaching now, they will remember you. They will remember how they felt when they were at games, because I'll tell you this right now, I work with adults who are always talking. I talk about my 9-year-old self and what I experienced in sports, because that's what That's one of the big components of my identity now. And so I do regard coaches. We know from the data, and from talking with people all over the place, not just athletes, but regular people who will convey both positive and negative memories and experiences with their early coaching interactions. So that's why it is really important for coaches to be self-aware that they have this impact, for coaches to be trained, and for coaches to demand workshops and trainings so that they can be in that capacity that better serves kids.
Yeah. I feel affirmed. I feel inspired as a budding coach in this arena. Let's imagine I'm gonna send this at least clip, if not the whole conversation, to the parents on my teams, or really to any parents entering youth sports with young kids. What advice or encouragement do you have for them?
My first piece of advice is reflect on and come to a realization that your own sports experiences will affect your kids' sports experiences. What you share with them, what of your experiences, positive or negative, are going to affect them. Second of all, you're not alone in this journey as a parent in the sports ecosystem. You're not the only one that's confused at times. You're not the only one that is unsure. If you feel that this is kind of a precarious space for you, that's cool. That's okay. Because point number 3 is that there are resources available to you. Resources that include national organizations like Positive Coaching Alliance, local organizations that tie in youth development practices with sports training. That's available to you. People like me are available to you through workshops, through trainings. Contact me. So those are the 3 points that I'd like to leave people with, is that you're not alone. We're all doing this together.
Yeah, absolutely. Links for the resources that you mentioned, including Positive Coaching Alliance and everything that you're doing through Coaching Kapwa, will be in the show notes if you're listening to this, in the description if you're watching this on YouTube. Carolyn, thank you so much. And to everyone who's listening, thank you for listening. Rate, subscribe, review, share, all of those things, and continue to build the world that we want to see for ourselves and our children. Peace.